All right, so we're here with Dr. Ryan, and Dr. Ryan, we just finished doing our live stream personal injury attorney sales presentation. That's the presentation where I actually give the presentation to your attorneys to create referrals for your practice. So, how many attorneys were at your gathering?
Yeah, so we had 6 attorneys and 3 paralegals. So
Okay, so pretty good showing. And generally speaking, how did it go?
it went really well. Yeah.
Really well, meaning
Um,
what? How do you know it?
everybody was, well, everybody was, they were interested in the information, definitely following along. And then at the end, when we talked about the case evaluations, everybody agreed to set up meetings to make that happen,
So in
like
other
every
words,
single one.
yeah, and that's what the presentation is for, is to start the referral process. So of all the attorneys that were there, they signed up to immediately start the referral process. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You had 6 attorneys there, and we start with 2 referrals each to show them, that in other words, that goes to show them everything that we just told them about in the presentation, right?
Right.
That's what, okay. So you had 6 attorneys signing up 2 referrals each.
Yep.
Okay. What's your case average?
Uh, between like 10
Um,
thousand in Washington, pretty easily.
So let's say 7,000 and you're in Washington State. You had 6 attorneys refer you to each. That's 12. 12 cases from one presentation. 12 times 7,000. That was $84,000. Are you aware of that?
Right. Yeah. Right.
One that now it actually gets better than that. You take $84,000 because they're gonna keep referring because you're actually gonna show that everything we talked about is true. So that'll actually
Right.
continue the referral. So $84,000 times 12 months. Ryan, are you aware that's a little over $1 million?
Yeah. Yeah. I've done the math. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I give, and matter of fact, what what's more crazy about it? I'm the one who gave the presentation, and you're the one getting the clients.
Right. Yeah.
Not a bad deal for you.
Pretty sweet deal. Yeah.
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 So yeah, that's great. So now really you just have to follow through with the procedures so they have their trust and confidence in you, just like I created it from the stage, right?
Right.
Okay. What were some of the things they were saying about the presentation?
Uh, a lot of them just said, "Wow, that's so much information." Um, and so one of the attorneys invited a workers' comp attorney who you could tell they were kind of asking him, like, have you seen this? Have you heard this? And, he was nodding his head yes to some of it. Right. And so he approached me at the end and just told me, what, basically, like, nobody in around here is doing, partial disability evaluations. This was a great presentation, lots of information. Another one asked me if I did personal evaluations at the end, and I said, well, that's what we're talking about, these case evaluations. We can go through and tell you, if somebody's going to get better or not, why they're not getting better. That was one of the specific questions I was asked. What do we do with these patients who aren't getting better?
Right,
Do we keep sending them out for treatment?
right.
So,
And so they were asking you for solutions to their problems.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then at the beginning of this presentation, had any of them planned on referring you patients prior to this presentation?
The ones that I've worked with previously were already kind of on board. There were two or three there that I'd worked with previously, but the new ones, it seemed like they just showed up for the continuing
Right.
ed credits and work. you know.
Do you see what I'm talking
So
about? How they go from a state of totally unconscious incompetence when they don't know what they don't know, that presentation just
right.
slowly shifts them into a state of unconscious incompetence and then they start realizing, oh my God, there's a lot I don't know here that's hurting and limiting my injury award. Did you catch that?
Right. Yeah.
How far into the
Yep.
presentation was I going before you noticed that it grabbed them, that they didn't know it all? Matter of fact, there's a lot they didn't know.
I I mean, I would say within a half hour to 45 minutes, it was like, wow, this is blowing my mind, you
That
know?
that's how quick we pretty much grabbed them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else unusual that they said about it?
Um, Trying to think of what else.
Did any of
Not
them
really.
say
I think
did any of them
just the over,
say, oh, I know this?
no,
No.
not a single one. And when I asked any of
And
the 10,
I'm sorry, go ahead about the 10.
when I asked if any of them had gotten any of the 10 points that we hit on, nobody raised their hand. Everybody said they weren't getting any of the 10.
None.
So,
Usually,
right.
like even in the presentation, I point out that most of the time they get 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
But your
Yeah.
attorneys
And
weren't the three that are normally given. Your attorneys weren't getting those either.
they weren't raising their hand or nodding their head in
Wow,
response. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Was it obvious to them that they had some, in other words, they had some serious issues going on with their doctor's documentation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man,
So,
so you signed up all of them, huh?
yeah, I'm in contact with all of them to meet. So,
Yeah. And of course, when we do that, we start the referral process. And then we go through each couple cases right away and do a driver analysis to see what they do and don't have. And what documentation are they missing that's going to be now limiting their injury award. And if you have attorneys that have 0 out of 10 categories, can you see how when you go over there, you're not going to find a whole lot? There's going to be a lot of
yeah.
missing information. Can you see that?
Yep.
And we call that what?
Uh, Opportunity.
We call
I
that
don't know.
opportunity. Yeah, we call that
Okay.
opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just took 6 attorneys roughly who weren't using you regularly and referring you, didn't think you were much of an authority, and immediately you became the authority through my presentation. All you have to do is just show that, yeah, you do know everything I covered with the cases that you're going to go over and evaluate, and the referral process has already started. You see how that works?
Yeah. Yeah. I do know
Can you
basically all of them.
go ahead?
Go ahead. Basically all of them have asked me what type of case they should pick out for this case evaluation. And that's something that, I've tried to answer, but I'd like to hear from you, your what you would say
Just
to that. Because I've
just
heard it
any
from
just any of their soft tissue injury cases.
okay. Okay.
Here's what you want. You don't want anything unique. You want just whatever your average soft tissue injury case is. Let's just look at that because that's
Okay.
what we're talking about.
Right.
Once they see that's what's happening with all their normal cases, it becomes even more real that this is a big problem.
Gotcha.
It's not a unique problem. It's a routine big problem. So yeah,
Okay.
you just want the normal soft tissue injury case. That's all you want to look at.
Okay.
So we did the presentation. You had 6 attorneys there. You had 2 paralegals, right?
Three.
3. So you just follow up with them to do the presentation, or we'll actually give the video recordings to them to give to their attorneys, okay? And then we'll follow up with
Okay.
that. So you already got 6 at 2. You're right at $1 million a year from one presentation. And by the way, you're not the first client that's done that. It's pretty routine when I have clients that have like 5, 6, or 7 or more attorneys at the presentation. It usually creates $1 million in referrals and how much business those attorneys are doing. That's usually what does happen. It's pretty common. So now you just gotta
It's
produce
awesome.
now, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, how long have
Exactly.
you been in practice prior to joining me?
Just over 4 years.
And had you talked to attorneys before and had much success at it?
No, I had talked to them, but I hadn't had much success.
Okay.
So
Can you see the difference between the presentation I gave and how you were talking to them?
yeah, big difference.
Any comparison?
No, no.
Can you see how if you were to go and talk to the attorney and walk out and then I give that presentation afterwards, he's not even thinking about you anymore?
Right. Yep.
But now, can you also see after he heard all that and sees all that information, how difficult is it going to be for them not to use you, knowing all that information and how it's hurting them when they don't have it now?
It should be very difficult for
Oh
them.
yeah, very different.
Yeah.
Did you get them to admit how much money they were losing by this documentation not being done?
Yeah, I went around to each of them and, went through that list of 10 and talked to them about, okay, so for each one of these that you are getting, check it off. I went through the process with them.
How much money
And,
did you get them to admit?
well, just depending on the number of cases between, $7,000 to $21,000 per month.
Did you add it up?
Because one of them had 20. Yeah, over. And then I said, multiply that by 12 per year. And if you're going to, practice, say, another 10 years,
When you
you know,
help me out here. So when you had them add up each
yeah.
case per month and then you took it over a year, what were some of the numbers that they were losing a year? Do you remember?
Uh, so I know I can recall one of them was 7 cases per month. So that was, 7,000 a month basically. And then times the 12, trying to think mental math over
Well,
at
wait a
the
minute. If he had
moment,
7
but
cases and he was missing 7 of the 10 components.
yeah, he was missing all of them. That's what they were saying. But
Well, if he had 7
so
cases
7 times
and he was
10, I guess
missing
70.
7, well, well, if he was missing 7 out of the 10 categories at $7,000 a case, he had 7
Yeah,
cases, right?
right. So
7 times
70,
7 is 49.
right.
49 over a year, so over
Yeah,
$500,000.
yeah, yeah. And you could tell a lot of them, like you've talked about in the videos, it was like that defense response at first, like, well, that's a ton of money. How is this possible?
Right.
And I think that's where I'm still at with some of them, but they are willing to meet with me for me to show them
But
what I'm talking about, what we're talking
we
about.
showed it to him in the presentation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
No,
But to
it
see
is.
the rubber meet the road,
It is
that's
hard
what
to,
difference.
yeah, it is hard to believe that that the doctor's documentation is that significant that they can easily be losing $500,000 a year. It's real. That is what's happening. Again, they're just in a state of unconscious incompetence. They don't know any better. That's all. Well,
Right.
they sure found out the other night, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So can you imagine now not doing personal injury and not knowing all this stuff, or doing personal injury and not knowing all this?
Yeah. You're just like every other chiropractor down the road.
Do you see how difficult it would
17.
be for you to build your personal injury practice not knowing this?
Yep.
But look what
Yeah.
happened. We now learned it in one presentation. You had what, 7 attorneys, 6 attorneys jump on board for their referrals, and for 2 or more referrals a month. So you're already up to $1 million in referrals. You just can't screw the pooch, right?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, you got to go over there and actually deliver everything we talked about now.
Yep.
And there you go. There you go. You're in. Where else can
Yeah.
where else can they send their cases?
Nowhere that's gonna get them what I can get
They
them.
can't,
So
because nobody knows
yeah.
this. Nobody knows this. And now they realize, can you see now they realize how bad they're getting they're getting hurt working with their present doctors on their present personal injury cases, how bad the documentation is.
Yeah. Yep.
And now they do. All right. All right. Anything else as we wrap it out? So for first time, it worked pretty good for you.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Any last closing words?
Nope. Nope.
All right. Sounds good. So it's
Well, thank you.
time for you to get to work.
Yeah, thank you, I guess is all I have to say. So
Yeah. Hey, can you imagine where else can you give an hour or 2 hour presentation and make $1 million
nowhere that I can think of.
in chiropractic? Is that crazy or what?
That's yeah, it's unheard
You
of.
never would have believed it until you saw it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what just happened. We just did about an hour, 2 hour presentation and just created $1 million in referrals. Is what just happened.
Yeah.
That's the power of knowledge and skill. That's what it is.
Right.
All right. Appreciate your time.